You're listening to There Ought to Be a Law, the Center for Auto Safety podcast with Executive Director Michael Brooks, Chief Engineer Fred Perkins, and hosted by me, Anthony Simino. For over 50 years, the Center for Auto Safety has worked to make cars safer. Hey, listeners. Today is July 23rd, 2025. All right.
Good morning, everybody.
You're hopefully hearing this on July 24th, 2025, or at your leisure, whenever you'd like to do it. Either way, we're going to start off. This is a trigger warning time. It's a lot of Tesla and Elon. Look, if you're eating breakfast now, pause the show, come back to it, digest. If you need to contact your spiritual advisor, do that. Because a lot is going on in the world of Tesla. Mainly, let's start off with our Washington Post article, quoting from it. State regulators in California argued Monday that Elon Musk's Tesla should lose its license to sell vehicles in California, as the automaker fights allegations in courtrooms on both sides of the country that it dangerously misled drivers to believe its cars could drive themselves without human oversight. Clutches pearls. Oh my God. This is brand new information to us, gentlemen. Wait, Tesla's been misleading its customers? How could it can't be true?
I mean, this goes way back to the company calling their level 2 technology autopilot and full self-driving, which clearly to any reasonable human being implies the vehicles are going to be able to drive themselves when they can't, and when humans need to be constantly monitoring their environment, just like they'd be driving a regular day without these features. So it's, the California, I would argue, they've gotten into this a little late in the game. We were writing letters to the California DMV in 2017 or 2018, telling them they needed to clamp down on this language from Tesla. As well as to the FTC, which did nothing and has continued to do nothing on the issue, despite it being clearly deceptive marketing. And it's a huge problem. Tesla has been fighting hard against the DMV in California on this issue and delaying court hearings and doing all it can to prevent this from coming to a head. But it looks like it's about to come to a head, so we're interested to see what happened. We'll see if there is a spine in California to go after this. I don't know what the ultimate solution here would be. I mean, are they going to tell Tesla to stop using those terms? The cat's out of the bag on that. I mean, those terms have already killed a number of people just by misleading them into thinking the vehicles are something they're not. But even at this late stage in the game, it would be nice to see a state require Tesla do something to protect its customers and innocent people on the road who are basically guinea pigs in Elon's world.
So Michael, I have to ask, you're saying the Federal Trade Commission, who oversees deceptive advertising, they haven't done anything to Tesla for doing this? Because if that's true, then welcome to the You Smell Amazing podcast. That's right. By listening to this podcast, you smell amazing, and everyone will like you.
Wow. Can I smell amazing by being on the podcast, or is it just the listeners?
By being on it, by being near it, by,
All right.
It slices, it dices, it frappes.
All right, I can get behind that. It sounds like a lot of food prep going on there too.
Well, for our listeners, we prefer that you stand way behind it. Okay. So I think the remedy in California is, if this goes through, that there'll be a 30-day period where they can't sell Teslas, plus some sort of, public shaming. I think they'll make Elon stand outside where people throw things at him. Is my understanding of the law, but I'm not an expert. That could just be my fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's been going on for a while now. I think it's been going on since 2022. So, that's when the DMV ordered Tesla. I think there was also a state law in California that was passed in 2023 that tells vehicles that no deceptive marketing is allowed on any features involving partial driving automations, level 2 automations, level 3 automations. You can't call them deceptive names, and yet Teslas continue to sell them that way in California. And so it's amazing that just this brazen flaunting of the law continues to go on from, by Tesla. And this isn't the only area, of course, but it's concerning that there aren't enough teeth in either our federal or state enforcement, even in California, to prevent these types of things from happening.
What could go wrong? Oh, yeah, people keep dying. Speaking of that, there's a trial going on in Florida that we talked about last week, and give you a little update on that. Missy Cummings, friend of the show, she is an expert testimonial person, expert witness. There we go. Expert witness in the case. And she said, quoting, "It is my professional opinion that Tesla's autopilot is defective because Tesla knowingly allows the car to be operated in operational domains for which it is explicitly not designed for." That seems pretty damning to me.
Yeah, well, it's totally correct. And a big part of the problem is, rather than using actual maps, which we all have, and GPS, which all Teslas have, to determine where a vehicle is and make sure that it's operating in an operating design domain for which it was designed and constructed to perform in. Tesla vehicles make a decision based on what they see through their cameras on the road to decide whether or not it's a safe operating environment for the vehicle. And it doesn't work, right? I mean, we see people turning autopilot on roads for which it wasn't intended. Supposedly, it's supposed to be restricted to certain highways that are restricted in a way they don't have turnoffs. You have exits instead of the ability, for instance, for tractor trailers to cross the road where Teslas can't see them. And you want those types of situations because we know that it's interstates and highways that are designed like interstates are some of the safest places to operate vehicles in America. The fatality and injury rates on major highways and interstates is incredibly low compared to a lot of other roads like rural roads, which is where the autopilot was turned on in the trial that's going on. So that's something that I lost my train of thought there. Man, here we go. I feel like a bad autonomous vehicle.
There's something about this I don't understand, which is that you guys are suggesting that wealthy people should have to conform to the laws like the rest of us?
No, I never said that. Don't brand me a communist.
Well, I would suggest that people who buy these vehicles have to monitor them and they have to drive. I mean, we see so many cars coming to the market where it seems like the biggest advertising point for the technology they're putting into them is to allow people to watch TV or text or do whatever the hell they want to do while they're driving that has nothing to do with actually paying attention to the driving task. And we're not there yet at all. We're not even close to an era where people can sit back and not pay attention to the road while they're in charge of operating a motor vehicle. All these false promises coming out of the mouths of Elon and some of the other folks in the auto industry who seem to want to follow in his footsteps are a huge problem. And what they've essentially done is set up a massive trap. It's sitting there waiting for any driver that believes them and starts failing to supervise the operation of their motor vehicle.
Sad. I agree. Okay. This is pointless because robo taxis are just going to take over all the driving for everybody, right? Like you don't need to drive a car. And Tesla is doing that now, rolling out their robo taxis, and they want everyone to focus on the robo taxis because no one's buying their cars anymore. So this is from an article in Fortune.com. The very day that Elon Musk expanded the boundaries of his 3-week-old autonomous ride-hailing service in Austin, Joe Tegmeyer's Tesla tried to illegally run a railroad crossing just as a locomotive approached. The robotaxi did not see that, and the safety observer had to stop the vehicle until the train had passed. So there's a little bit of work that still needs to be done to be polished up with the software, but otherwise, it's been an amazing opportunity to see how well this can kill me. I see how well the expanded service is working.
Wow.
Joe T. Fellow said.
So almost running into a train requires just a little polish, right?
It feels like a Monty Python skit. Like it does. Like, oh no, it's fine. Just a flesh wound. I'm okay. Like
these days, life feels like a Monty Python skit.
I don't understand this mindset. The guy gets into a vehicle that tries to kill him. We're aware it didn't have consciousness. It wasn't thinking, I'm gonna kill Joe Tegmeyer. But it tried to kill him because it's a piece of shit. And he's like, it's gotta smooth some parts out. It's okay. What is that mindset? Let's go to resident psychologist Fred Perkins.
There are people who jump out of airplanes for fun. There's I think that maybe, there's an outlet for people who like to do that sort of thing in the AV industry. People are willing to go to extreme lengths to convince themselves that these things are okay, and the risk that you absorb, both legal and physical, when you get in these things is perfectly okay. I guess progress is their most important product. Am I dating myself? That was General Electric's slogan way back when.
I don't know what you do in your free time. You can date yourself. We won't judge.
All right. Fair enough.
Okay.
Stephen Colbert suggested that the president do that in recent, never mind. We won't go there.
Okay. So I want to know if there's any listeners in the Austin area who are like, yeah, I want to get into this suicide machine. I mean, robo taxi. I want to, play death with some minimum wage employee who's probably looking at their phone and every now and then just like, a big red button. If you are that, go to autosafety.org and click on donate. And if you click on donate, we're more likely to read your comment. No, we'll read all of your comments. Oh, we've got a comment we got to cover today. I forgot all about it. Remind me, guys. We got to do that comment. Question. But Michael, okay, so Tesla's going crazy. They're getting sued right and left. They tend to just throw money at the problem, and be like, hey, we settled that case. It was the driver's fault.
Actually, they did settle. There've been, I think, 2, maybe more, but 2 that I know of autopilot collisions that involved a tractor trailer crossing a road, and the Tesla camera is unable to detect them. The second one of those that happened was actually just settled this past week by Tesla. So it looks like they're doing a good job of settling cases where it's very clear that their level 2 systems autopilot are failing. And then they're trying to fight the ones like the one currently going on in Florida where they think they have a chance. Although, there's a possibility that they tried to settle that one as well, but that the family there simply said, we want to take this one to court because we want to stop this practice, which is a rare and admirable thing to do, as we see so many and for sometimes understandable reasons, so many people accept settlements, and this stuff never makes it to the public. So we're hopeful that this trial and the testimony generated from it, and hopefully a jury that has some sense and can see through Tesla's attempts to blame the human, can result in a decision that has a broader impact.
This jury, they're located in what state?
Florida.
Okay. Yep. Odds on them having sense. I'm just kidding.
Depends how many Florida men are on the jury, right?
So, but Michael, okay, so Tesla goes out there and does crazy things, but that's okay. We have checks and balances. We have safety regulators who are overseeing these things. And that brings us to our next article. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, part of the Transportation Department, is shrinking from 772 employees to 555. That is more than the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration are also both losing more than 25% of their staff. We're all going to die. So more and more dangerous vehicles are getting out there claiming, I can drive myself, bro. And the government's response is, yeah, Yeah, I believe that. Let's fire the people whose job it is to make sure these things are not missiles of death. Is that right? Is that what I'm reading here?
Well, I mean, technically, they're not being fired for the most part. I mean,
Oh.
there were some probationary employees who I believe were you could call it fired and let go right a few months back.
Probationary sounds like they did something wrong.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a moniker given to a person in their first year of service. They're probationary until they're a full employee, kind of a trial period, I guess. But the vast majority of folks who are leaving NHTSA and leaving, the other highway safety agencies and the DOT as a whole are doing so by taking, a deferred payoff plan of some sort where they're leaving government service voluntarily with the promise of a nice compensation package. But this is it's very disconcerting because for a lot of reasons, but we're losing talent at the agency that's never going to come back. For the first time in NHTSA's history, I think they were fairly positive about their staffing levels at the end of the Biden administration. They felt like they were up to snuff in the enforcement and research and rulemaking departments. And they were making some good progress on rulemaking and making progress in a lot of areas. And now, less than a year later, we're seeing, massive cuts, 25% of the NHTSA, 25% of the Federal Highway Administration and others. And so it's scary in a lot of ways to know that we're not going to have these folks working, but it's also scary. It's kind of disconcerting when you look at what's happening at the DOT. The FAA literally has more employees than the number of people that die on our roads every year. They've got more than 40,000 employees, and I think they cut 1,000 or so of those. The FAA oversees an industry that's, obviously needs some oversight, as some of the things Boeing has done would tell you. But there are a whole lot of employees there in an industry that we see very little loss of life and injury. The impact, the negative impacts of commercial airliners on American lives just aren't really there. And you've got 40 something thousand people working on that issue. Whereas at NHTSA, they're responsible for overseeing an industry and overseeing drivers and the transportation ecosystem that kills about 40,000 people. It kills everyone working at the FAA every year. And yet they are only going to be down to 550 some odd employees now who are supposed to somehow manage all of that chaos. And it just points to, the people who are in charge right now, the government, simply don't understand what NHTSA does. You see a lot of congressmen saying things. In fact, my gaslight of the week this week will be one of those. A lot of congressmen saying things and just they don't understand how our regulatory agencies work and the efforts they put in to save lives around the country. And NHTSA is just completely sorely underrated, underfunded, and has been for many years. And, just when NHTSA is getting up to a point where we think they're doing good, boom, a new administration comes in and kneecaps them. So it's a terrible situation. And it's, who knows if they're going to be able to attract, better talent in the future to look at things like automated vehicles and some of the advanced software and electronics going into vehicles and distractions and impairment. Who's going to want to go work at an agency where their job is constantly under threat, and where their work is completely undervalued by large portions of the government and the country? I don't know. It's a bad time over at NHTSA, and we hope that things get better, although the light at the end of the tunnel is probably still a good bit away.
Even with goodwill on the part of the administration and the best efforts of everybody who's there, to rebuild that agency is going to take many, many years. Even if there is an administration that sees the importance of this regulatory agency, the work that they do there is very sophisticated, and needs a lot of background. It takes years and years to not only train the people who are the employees, but also to establish the procedures and the human relationships necessary to allow them to do their work. This is not a small thing that we're talking about here. This is a generational diminishment of the ability of the government to regulate an industry that is killing 40,000 Americans every year. It's hard to overstate the tragedy of this situation.
Yeah, we beat up NHTSA a lot on the show, but I think all of us want it. But Michael, I just want to clarify something you said. You said it'll be reduced to 5,500 employees at NHTSA.
555.
Yeah, 555. That is insane. Like 555 people is not a lot of people. Like that's
no, and then in fact, a lot of those folks, obviously aren't directly involved in, research, enforcement, rulemaking activities. There are a lot of folks at NHTSA who are involved in state grant making and other things to make sure that states and police officers and firemen get some funding and that kind of thing. So it's an across the board cuts. They're not providing a list of who's leaving, where and exactly where all these cuts or are being made. So we're not really sure what the impact is at the moment. We don't know, for instance, whether there have been drastic cuts to the enforcement division or whether a lot of these cuts have come. I expect many of them have come in the state grant areas, given a lot of the cuts that have been made in those areas to the money that's flowing in. So ultimately, the proof is going to be in the pudding when we see, what impact this has on the roads and on the, fatality statistics. And it's a long-term analysis. It's not something we're going to figure out this week or next month.
Well, continuing with this, I'm going to go to my gaslight of the week. That's right, because you mentioned gaslight. This is from an article in East Bay Times. I'm not going to link to this article because there's a lot of weird typos in it. But there's a good quote in here from Jonathan Morrison, who is he now NHTSA's director? Has he passed?
They haven't voted on the confirmation, but the hearings.
Well, he said this: realization of the mobility and safety benefits from AVs depends entirely upon consumer trust, and that trust must be rooted in safety. The gaslight part is realization of the mobility and safety benefits from AVs. That's science fiction, people. They're sure, I can imagine a future where the mobility and safety benefits of magical thinking will save lives, but this is not a thing. It's not a thing. There's no one has proven that these vehicles are safer than your average teenager. I don't care what Waymo's PR department says. This is wishful thinking, magical thinking, saying, hey, in the future, these cars will drive themselves and give you a foot massage as you go along. But wait, I got a better future. We don't even need cars, man. Did you ever see Star Trek? Yeah, teleportation. This is what we're going to do. Oh, know how safe that will be? Like, we don't even need airbags anymore. This is awesome. The future is incredible. Fuck you, NHTSA's new director.
I'm going to jump into my gaslight here because it fits right in with that. The co-CEO of Waymo is a woman named Takedra Mawakana. Forgive me if I've mispronounced the name. But she posted recently, and she said, I'm quoting here, "Here at Waymo, we're committed to making roads safer for everyone, including pedestrians, cyclists, and skaters. As someone who loves to roller skate and blade, I know that safety is not optional, it's essential," close quote. And she cites a quote from a third party who was named Brendan Desjardins, I think, pro skateboarder. And he says, quote, "I personally love..."
Oh, it was getting so good. And then Fred's internet froze.
Than
Wait,
any
Fred,
car
I'm
ever
sorry,
would.
Fred, your internet froze for a second. Can we back up to pro skater?
Back up to the skateboarders.
Yeah, pro skater. What did he say?
Okay, pro skateboarder Brendan Desjardins I personally love looking over my shoulder and seeing a Waymo. It gives us more buffer than any car ever would, close quote. And then she invites you to learn more about how Waymo is making roads safer here. I think this is really cute. Waymo's official position on operational safety with respect to vulnerable road users is that the CEO loves to roller skate and the pro skateboarder loves Waymo. And I guess that settles it. Familiarity with a hazard is not evidence that the hazard doesn't exist. The experience of dodging a bullet is not proof of your invulnerability. Waymo is urgently, perhaps desperately, pushing the idea that familiarity with their devices is an adequate substitute for safety design and performance transparency. I guess Waymo could have divulged their safety design metrics, key safety indicators, how well the operations conform to design standards, how much redundancy they built into their software and hardware when operating in the vicinity of pedestrians. But that's probably a lot of work. Better to quote a professional skateboarder. Like NASA with the space shuttle, substituting the idea that, quote, it's never been a problem, close quote, by touting the increasing miles driven without a catastrophe, instead of transparency about their safety design and performance, is really setting them up for a big PR fall when that catastrophe occurs. Cue the late show monologues. You can almost see them happening. The big fiscal question for Alphabet is whether Alphabet will be able to cash out a Waymo before that happens. GM waited too long with Cruise. So, in light of recent deaths and injuries involving Waymo vehicles, we're offering
What were those?
Sorry,
what were the deaths and injuries for the Waymos?
Well, Bill Koopman reported that there was a death involving a Waymo vehicle. He credits them with 1/6 of a fatality. I'm not sure what the details of that are. There were injuries, particularly involving
the bicyclist.
Who got doored by the Waymo and then ran into another Waymo. So, talking about skateboarding to deflect the public's need for transparency into their safety design and performance, I'm nominating Takedra Mawakana and Waymo for this week's Gaslight Award.
I mean, that's pretty good. You got my Waymo in there. And, mine was just slightly obnoxious, but I stand behind it. Michael might disagree, but, let's see.
It doesn't matter. I'm going to win this week.
Oh, come on.
My gaslight nom of the week is Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno, who made some comments at last week's confirmation hearing for the NHTSA administrator that were, dumb would be a good way to describe them. But he says he's talking about the law that was passed in the bipartisan infrastructure law that would require alcohol detection devices to be installed in vehicles. So here's his take on it. I don't drink at all, he said. And yet in the infrastructure law, which has to do with roads and bridges, they snuck in a provision that starting in 2026 model year vehicles, I have to have an impairment detection device in my vehicle before my car can start. Why would I have to have an impairment detection device in my car? That doesn't lower the price of the cars. It raises the price of cars. And he also called the whole concept insane. Now, there's so much wrong with this statement. First of all, whether or not you drink at all has nothing to do with it. There's always a chance someone's going to drive your car. You're going to sell your car. There's a million ways that a vehicle can change hands or be operated by someone else. Yes, you're correct on one thing. This was put in the infrastructure law. It was not snuck in. It was put in and was in the bill for quite some time in multiple forms before it was placed in the Infrastructure Act. And it does not start in 2026 model year vehicles. When it was passed, there was a provision that stated that NHTSA needed to put out the rulemaking by 2024 and have the rulemaking take effect in the next 2 to 3 years after the rulemaking, but it also included a escape clause where the agency can say we're not able to do this yet. And that's essentially what the agency has done. They put out an advance notice of proposed rulemaking that basically asked a lot of questions, had no answers. They did this in 2023. And it's not going anywhere right now. The technology still has a little ways to go, but it's something that is incredibly important and could cut down on the, thousands and thousands of impaired driving deaths we see every year. So there's no way really no way to describe this other than it's completely inaccurate, and it just shows what a lack of understanding a sitting senator can have regarding an agency and a rulemaking and a law. I mean, the guy simply has no clue. So for that, Bernie Moreno gets my gaslight of the week. It's hard to call someone the dumbest senator in the building when Tommy Tuberville is around, but he's certainly in the running.
I'm going to object to that because stupidity is not the same as cupidity. And, I'm not sure he's gaslighting so much as just being stupid.
Well, he's telling us that the law is one thing when it clearly isn't, to make us want to disagree with the law, right? I think that qualifies.
It is a tough one when it comes to judging. I mean, Waymo by default gets a +1. Mine automatically gets a +10. But I think
wait.
Excuse me. Yeah. It's a height adjustment. That's what's going on here. What's wrong?
That's an inverse proportion.
Yeah. Right. Do some math here, kid.
All right.
But I think Michael's might be good. It was pithy. It pointed out stupidity, gaslight or not. I don't know. I'm gonna give the edge to Michael this week.
Oh man, damn it!
Paychecks.
I forgot to include the fact that Bernie Moreno made his career as a luxury car dealer. So.
I love this. I don't drink, so I don't need this in my car. I don't crash. I don't need airbags. There you go. I don't use my side view mirrors. Why am I paying for them? Wait a second.
Well, that's like the gun guys who say, I'm a law-abiding citizen, so I should be able to have my guns. Everybody's a law-abiding citizen until they're not.
Exactly. I look forward to the day that Senator Bernie Moreno gets pulled over with a DUI. That's coming. Hey, let's go into a topic we've talked about here many times. Mr. Perkins talked about many times about simulations are always doomed to succeed, right? Is that what one of your t-shirts says?
God, you are trainable. I'm impressed.
Well, don't tell my wife. This is from an article in MSN, I guess from Newsweek, titled "Automakers Still Need to Crash Test Cars Despite Advances in AI." We all know that AI is going to solve everything. Anyway, quoting from this article, and I'm quoting someone from Volvo, I guess. While virtual crash testing has come a long way, physical crash tests remain a crucial complement. It allows us to directly evaluate how the car's hardware performs in real-world scenarios. Even as our virtual models continue to improve, physical testing is needed to validate and refine them to ensure accuracy. Lada Jacobson, Senior Technical Specialist for Injury Prevention at Volvo Cars, told Newsweek. So we're going to smash them in the real world, make sure things happen. We can't fully rely on computers and whatever Sam Altman says, which I think is good.
He's exactly right. And the people who would advocate using AI to figure out what happens in a car crash are like asking Charles Dickens to build a bridge. They're just completely different animals.
Wow.
That metaphor made no sense to you.
It did not. It didn't at all. But further in this article, I'm going to point out Volvo conducts 200 to 250 crash tests annually. A new model on a new platform has crashed around 130 to 140 times alone. That's physically. That's not virtually. They conduct 80,000 crashes annually on around 80 different vehicles. I guess that seems in the virtual that seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to, you can 130 to 140 crashes of one vehicle. That's expensive, right? And that's a lot. Volvo, I'm not sure if all manufacturers do that much, but they also run. I suppose they run simulations on all of the different types of crashes that you might see, all the different ways in which cars can be struck, because there are an infinite number of ways for that to happen. And so testing as many as possible is a great thing. But what you'll notice in this article, they interview Volvo, Mercedes, and Nissan engineers, and every single one of them said essentially simulations are great, but for validation, every one of them said validation, we have to do physical tests.
That's great. Are they required to do that for validation, or they do that because those companies have a safety engineering mindset?
I mean, I would argue that you can't certify to federal motor vehicle safety standards without conducting those crash tests in a physical environment.
Hey, I'd like to invite the CEO of Ford back on the show anytime you want, buddy. Anytime at all.
I'm not sure if Anthony wants him on the podcast or wants a date, but
he'd be entertaining. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So another issue we've talked about quite a bit. This is from Arizona 5. Recalled without repairs. Why some drivers still can't get dangerous Takata airbags fixed. And this is so disturbing to me. This is talks about a family that has a 2015 Volkswagen Beetle. They get a notice in the mail saying you need to get this fixed immediately. In bold capital letters, the notice says serious injury and even death can occur. And so this family, they're like, oh my God, I don't want to be in serious injury or death. And so they go into the Volkswagen dealership and they're like, yeah, we don't have any parts. Have a nice day, which is insane. Michael, do you know anything about this? Because they quoted you in this article.
Well, this particular recall has been going on for 2.5 years. And, there's really no excuse not to have parts available for a recall that's this dangerous at this point. And not only that, 2.5 years after this particular recall is announced, but we are 9+ years, 10 years out from the initial Takata airbag recalls. And, Volkswagen knew then that these vehicles were going to need to have airbags replaced. So there's really no excuse. I'm not, and this isn't just this family, this is about a 3 or 4 month period now where Volkswagen is saying they just won't have these airbags, or airbag inflators for replacement on the vehicles. So
what is this family supposed to do? It's a failure. What are they?
Well, that's the problem. There's nothing you can really do as a consumer in this situation other than not drive the vehicle. You can't force the manufacturer or the dealer to give you a rental vehicle because nothing requires them to do that. You can't, your options are basically take the risk or don't drive the car. So it's particularly with this Takata issue. These folks are in Arizona that were in the story. It's hot there, not as humid, but the heat and is a contributor to the defect there. And as these vehicles age, they get more and more dangerous. This vehicle's 10 or 11 years old. It's getting towards that spot where, the older these vehicles are, the higher the risk of an inflator explosion becomes. And so it's not a vehicle I would put my daughter in. And I guess I would be the one going without a car for a while she drove my car, because it's simply one of these situations where it's just, although the risk may be low, we're not sure. You just, there's no way for even me or, anyone really to know when of these airbags is going to explode. And so the best thing to do is just eliminate the risk altogether, not drive the vehicle. But that can put people in really bad situations if they have a vehicle they rely on to get to work or for any other important reason. There's no option at that point for them. And it's kind of upsetting that Volkswagen screwed around and didn't have enough parts available to do this recall, and yet is unwilling to provide alternate transportation for these folks.
VW is in big trouble. Their sales are collapsing. People don't particularly like their cars. Their newest car, the ID Buzz, is going nowhere. People don't like that. I think that their sales philosophy is to put cars on the road at as low a price as possible because they make up the money in repairs. They're no, I'm serious. I really think that that's their strategy. I unfortunately have owned a couple of Volkswagens, and man, those things they just I left the front bumper in a snowbank once because I backed up the car and the front bumper fell off.
Was that a Jetta?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
those older Jettas have a significant front bumper attachment issue. I had a buddy in college, and his used to fall off all the time. We put it back on.
Yeah, well, I fixed it with coat hangers, so that was my approach. But I just think that company's in real trouble. I don't like their philosophy of making money off of repairs and having people have to run back in. And I don't know. I think that they're going to squander all that money they made back in the 60s pumping out those bugs. And I can't see them in the future, especially now if they want to get into autonomous vehicles. That's just, they're going to sink billions of dollars into that, and it's going to go exactly nowhere.
Yeah, weren't they already involved with Ford and then pulled out of that venture as well? So
yeah, but they're trying to do it on their own now, and that's bound to work out well, right? Worked out so well for so many other people.
I am a Volkswagen. My last 3 vehicles have been Volkswagen Jettas, and I have not had really any problems at all, other than a couple of air conditioner issues. So maybe I just got lucky, but I do like their price points.
Speaking of making money on repairs, this episode is brought to you by Microsoft. I'm just kidding. Go to autosafety.org, click on donate. Further down in this article, though, it talks about I guess this is this Arizona 5 is one of those on your side. We'll help you. They contacted Volkswagen, and Volkswagen's like, hey, if they don't have parts, the dealer should give you a loaner vehicle. And then they kept pushing, and then Volkswagen within days like, hey, we have the part to fix this. Like,
oh wow, they actually just found
they
one.
said,
They pulled it out of thin air.
It was in my other couch cushion.
So here's an idea. Everyone in America who is sitting there waiting on an airbag right now or a replacement for these vehicles, call your local on your side consumer reporter, get them to do a story, and an airbag will magically appear.
I like it. And with that, let's jump into the Tao of Fred.
Well, thank you. I was going to talk about Piggly Wiggly, but I guess I'll talk about something else. Yeah. So what I want to talk about is the analogy between the AV development and NASA's space shuttle. So for the younger people here, there used to be a time when NASA would launch space shuttles, and it was NASA's always had the ambition of preserving NASA's own organizational longevity. And the space shuttle was one of those deals. They wanted to be the only ride that people could use to get into space. In order to do that, they built this big thing called a space shuttle. And on the side of it, in order to launch it, it was so heavy that they had to put on 2 solid rocket motors, right? Big, tall things that are filled with rocket fuel. They built them in pieces, right? And in order to build it up, they had to stack the pieces together through something called a field joint. And the field joints were bolted up, and they were supposed to seal and keep the gases inside the rocket motor. But in mission 51L, it failed catastrophically, and it caused the space shuttle to fail and killed 7 astronauts. This is not the same as the Discovery, which came years later. That was a different problem. But the point is that if you look at the Rogers Commission report, which is the government's answer to the, or analysis of the failure, I should say, there's a lot of revealing information. And on page 61, for example, it shows that the design, which was intended to close the joint and compress the O-rings that were in the joint to keep the gases where they belong, actually was a bad design. It was in the engineer's design, as the pressure increased, a flange would compress the O-ring, and that would cause the seal to be reinforced. What actually happened is that when they built it, the seal or the tang that was supposed to compress the O-ring pulled away from the O-ring, so allowed the seal to happen. It allowed the seal to be leaky. So NASA discovered this, and rather than fixing the design, they went in and they put putty in to try to seal it up. Now, when they put the putty in, they were able to close it up for the most part, but of 21 launches with the ambient temperature 61 degrees or lower, only, 4 showed signs of O-ring thermal distress, but there were other indicators of failure. 9, there were actually 9 prior instances of field joint distress. Now, what is the analogy here? The analogy is that they knew there were problems. They convinced themselves that they could convince the public that the PR of launching these things on schedule, on time, was much more important than actually going back to fix the design. They did not reveal this structural design problem at all to the public, and they ran through it. And their ethos was, well, it's never been a problem. We haven't killed anybody yet. Now, this is the exact analogy of the AV industry saying, we've driven 100 million miles and we haven't killed anybody yet. They're really setting themselves up for the same kind of failure that NASA experienced when the space shuttle blew up, and all of the subsequent problems that happened as a result of that. Loss of credibility, loss of the program, a lot of strutting, and but of 12 of the 21 launches with the ambient temperatures of 61 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, 4 showed signs of O-ring thermal distress, erosion, or blowout by soot. Each of the launches below 61 Fahrenheit resulted in 1 or more O-rings that showed signs of thermal distress. That's 20% of the launches for the space shuttle in colder conditions showed signs of leakage of the hot gases that were detected, and then NASA did nothing, certainly did nothing about addressing this in public. So NASA management knew there was a persistent problem, but the pressure to continue operations caused them to override safety concerns. That sounds a lot like AV management, doesn't it? They're running off the road. They're going the wrong way down streets. Waymo's going the wrong way down streets. They're weaving. They're dodging. They're injuring people in the bike lanes. They're operating in the bike lanes. Okay? But none of this is a concern for them. The only statistic, the only metric that they report is how many miles they've driven. Even that's very confusing because there's a lot of different models, a lot of different software. But the point is that they, like NASA, are trying to put a Band-Aid on the problem rather than address it in public and let the public know where the risk really is. So we don't know what the AV safety designs are. This is a lot like NASA not letting people know what the real risk factors are associated with the shuttle and how they've decided to just ignore problems because, number one, the public doesn't know about it. Number two, it hasn't killed anybody yet. We do know Tesla's FSD operations have killed numerous people, that AVs have been reported to grievously injure pedestrians, travel in the opposite direction, aggressively intrude on crosswalks, according to reports, interfere with emergency operations, illegally intrude on bike paths. So are these AV anomalies like all of the public smoke or all of the instances of O-ring degradation that NASA covered up? Or is there something else going on here? It seems like the logic is that too few people have died so far for us to really address the safety concerns. That seems to be the case with Tesla, certainly. And, Waymo seems to be headed in kind of that same direction. So a lot of people have died due to reliance on FSD. Before the government gives the green light to AV operations, they should really insist on developer transparency on their safety designs, the key safety indicators, and the test performance relative to design limits as indicated by the key safety indicators. This is engineering data that I'd be willing to bet a nickel all of these companies are recording. As far as I know, they're not sharing it with the public. I don't have any knowledge, Michael, you may, that they're sharing that with the regulators, but it seems like the least that should happen before you expose the public these delicate bags of meat, right, that are walking down the street to these 3-ton vehicles that are going by with no human intervention. This, I've been talking recently about how insane it is that this dangerous industrial machinery is allowed to operate in the vicinity of people with no knowledge of what the safety margins are, no knowledge of safety redundancies, no transparency at all as to what the jeopardies are facing the pedestrians. Kedra at Waymo said, well, I'm a roller skater, and this roller skater said it's okay, so that's our safety response. I don't think that's adequate. And if they continue down this road, I believe they're going to have their own eventual challenger disaster equivalent. Human spectators and vulnerable road users are going to pay a very heavy price for this. And there'll be a lot of implications for Waymo, a lot of people to blame, but it's really time for them to step up, do the right thing, show us how they do this, show us what their safety indicators are, and show us that they're making steady progress toward a safer future if, in fact, as the Kedra does, they claim that the future will be safer. So that's my towel this week.
It will be safer for roller skaters. You just got to dust them off and get out there.
Well, maybe that's the answer. Give everybody roller skates.
I think it is.
I kind of like that idea.
Oh, no. Hey, I'm going to jump into listener mail before we get into our recalls. This is a question that came in from Bob Hansen. And his question is, when is something going to be done to control the headlight and blindness problem? I agree. The Ford and Chevrolet trucks are the killers, especially those that have lift kits, 35-inch plus size tires. I'm only referencing new truck production. The states that have yearly inspections don't enforce this issue on older model trucks. Thanks for writing in, Bob. I agree. I hate these vehicles that are out there just trying to blind me. Gentlemen, when is something going to be done?
Never.
Okay, then. Michael?
You kind of have to figure out what the source of annoyance is here, right?
Being blinded.
Being blinded by what?
By these headlights that are...
Is it an LED light? Is it an aftermarket light? Is it an aftermarket modification on the truck? Like, there are a lot of people out there driving vehicles whose headlights haven't been aimed recently. There are a lot of people who are going on eBay.
In Bob's face.
Going on eBay or going to a parts dealer that are buying fraudulent or counterfeit parts off eBay that haven't been certified to Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standards, because that means they're cheaper. There's a massive black market industry there. So, and there are a lot of folks who raise their trucks up to crazy heights. That's not something that you can regulate on the federal level. It's something that states could regulate, but they don't do it very often. So, it's hard to place blame in this scenario. We've heard a lot of chatter, and there's even a couple of groups who are anti-LED just generally, who are kind of on the forefront of pushing for some type of regulations here. But ultimately, it comes down to one factor for me. I have not yet seen any data whatsoever that shows that LED lights on stock LED lights coming with vehicles are contributing to some type of safety issue. They're certainly contributing to some type of annoyance issue, because there are a lot of people who are out there who are annoyed by these bright lights. But you kind of have to, you have to know in order to criticize or put a regulation out that can apply to this, you'd have to know what the source of this problem is. Is it inadequately aimed lights? Is it non-certified counterfeit lights? Is it a redneck raising their pickup truck? What is the problem? And if it's a lot of different problems, I think that a lot of those problems are probably either addressed by state regulations, because states do regulate certain things like aftermarket modifications that NHTSA doesn't have the authority to regulate. And you have to do this on a state by state basis to get anything done. I think the feds could contribute, not NHTSA per se, but, Customs and Border Control, preventing counterfeit vehicle equipment from entering America, whether that's in bulk or piece by piece on eBay or however they're getting it into America to sell it. There's some things that could be done there to lower this problem. I just don't know if like Fred says, I don't know if there is a one size fits all solution. I certainly don't think there is at the federal level.
Well, Bob, do what I do. When you're driving at night, put on sunglasses. It's all good.
There are night glasses that are sold that claim to reduce the blue light that's emitted by LEDs. I think they probably also reduce the light entering your eyes at night as a driver, which is, could mean that you're reducing your vision generally as well, which is probably not a good thing. But there are some good reviews and some bad reviews of them. I wasn't able to formulate a scientific opinion on whether or not they're effective, but there are some people that seem to use those with some effect.
Well, this may be something, a bit of a self-limiting problem, because these people who elevate their pickup trucks, number one, are basically young men who wear bill caps, and they will no longer be young men after a while. And the other thing is that when they do this, they are really increasing the rollover propensity of those trucks. And so they're, much more likely to have a short lifespan than other people. There may be Darwinian effects that limit this. So
the solution to the LED light problem is rollover deaths for the people that race pickups.
Wow. You heard it here first.
That's tough.
Eugenics through aftermarket purchases. Well, hey, Bob, thanks for writing in. If anyone else has a question, send it to contact@autosafety.org, or there's a form on the website. I think there is somewhere. It's pretty easy to find. You can find it. Bob found it. Let's jump on to recalls. First one up, Volvo. That's right. NHTSA issues urgent brake failure warning for select Volvo vehicles. This is, let me open up the loss of brake function. This is a bunch of 2023 Volvos with a whole bunch of silly acronyms after them. In certain driving scenarios, while coasting down a hill and using B mode or one pedal drive, the vehicle may lose brake function. Oh no! So this is for EVs because it's one pedal drive.
They've got it could be hybrids as well. Okay. They have the regenerative braking.
So NHTSA advises do not use regenerative braking. Turn off B mode. Okay.
Until you get the remedy. There's an over-the-air update that's available for this recall, and it I think there's only 11,000 or so of these vehicles, or 12,000 of these vehicles, and 11,000 have already been fixed. It's an over-the-air update, so most people have done it. But the problem is pretty significant. They even NHTSA even included a video there of a person who was driving kind of on a mountain pass, and all of a sudden their brakes just failed, and they started flying down the hill. Ran into an embankment, and we're actually very lucky that they weren't killed or injured in the crash. But all of this was caused by another recall. So, and one of the recalls we talk about a lot, the rear view camera failures. Volvo had an original recall. It was 25V282, which I believe they put out earlier this year, maybe March or April. And the remedy for the rear view camera recall actually causes the problem that we see here in this new recall, which shows you that, software, it's a kind of a new world. When you talk about software in vehicles, this isn't something we see traditionally, a recall on one system in the vehicle impacting another system in the vehicle. It's a major concern, I think, as vehicles become more defined by software and electronics that kind of integrate multiple systems. We've talked about it in the integration of the infotainment and the rear view camera systems. And I think it's also a good argument for standards that make sure manufacturers are thoroughly testing and validating software updates to confirm not only you're fixing the problem you're addressing, but also making sure you're not creating new problems in the process. We saw a recall from Tesla that involved phantom braking. Actually, I think the Washington Post did a story on it a couple of years ago. Generate even more phantom braking complaints after the recall was performed, which raises questions about the how solid the software validation process is when these manufacturers are scrambling to get out a recall remedy and a software update for their customers. Are they doing enough testing of these updates before they're released to the public? And in this case for Volvo, I think the answer is no, they didn't. And they put a lot of people in significant danger. Now they're scrambling to make sure these folks get an over-the-air update quickly. And that's why NHTSA put out the press release.
Fred, Michael said that this kind of software in vehicles is new, and this kind of software affecting, like you fix something here, it causes something else to break here in autos is new. Oh, maybe. Is that kind of thing in software new? Is there something that software engineers do to make sure?
Well, yeah, it's called software validation. But there's a problem here, which is that if you do software validation on software that doesn't affect physical objects, well, you can zip right through it, right? And who the hell cares if your Microsoft Word has a little problem? So they'll fix it on the next update. The problem here is that the software affects the operation of a physical vehicle that can kill people. And in order to do a complete regression analysis and validation, it would take perhaps thousands of years because of the numbers of variables involved and the numbers of safety critical functions involved. And that is only for the computer part of it. If you look at the physical vehicle and say, well, I've got to validate all of these software updates in terms of not only what it can do to the logic, but also what happens with the physical hardware, you've got an enormous engineering problem. There are no standards for what that's got to do. So companies right now are in a position where they can just suck their thumb and do whatever they want and say, well, that's good enough. But we urgently need standards for how to test these vehicles and how to test the software and validate the software and make sure that they're not going to kill people.
I like it. Next recall is my weekly love letter to Jim Farley. Ford, 694,271 vehicles. The 2021 to 2024 Ford Bronco Sport, 2020 to 2022 Ford Escape. A fuel injector may crack, resulting in fuel or vapor migrating to and or accumulating near ignition sources, resulting in potential underhood fire. So they got bum fuel injectors.
Sounds like it.
Essentially, the fuel injectors could crack, and this basically could lead to a fire. I think this is a kind of an ongoing saga. We talked last week about the gigantic number of Ford recalls this year and how that relates to consent order that was agreed to with NHTSA by Ford that requires them to go back and redo some of their recalls. And this is one of those that they're coming back and redoing a couple of recalls where they didn't quite figure things out the first time. So this is a new remedy, and so Ford owners are going to have to return again to the dealership to get a fix on this one. And it looks like they'll be hearing about it in mid-August.
Well, I mean, this is obvious. Their fuel injectors are supplied by an Italian company. All right, last recall. Dahmer Vans USA. 43,422 vehicles. The 2020 to 2023 Mercedes-Benz Metris. Oh.
These are like vans.
Yeah.
Like buses.
Uh-oh. Power may be sporadically interrupted to the infotainment system. The rear view camera, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't care anymore. Rear view cameras, garbage. Don't even use them. I go to every car I have now, I just smash the rear view camera because what's the point? I give up.
I love my rear view camera.
Yeah, so do I.
It's never not worked, which is, why it's disconcerting to see so many rear view camera recalls. This one is, why do you have an infotainment system in a commercial
I don't know.
van?
This is interesting, though. It says, due to a deviation in the development process at a supplier, not us, man, somebody else, the thickness of the electrical pins of the infotainment system might not meet specifications. I mean, I don't know. You're going to buy tens, thousands of these things. Maybe check a few as samples. Does this meet our specifications? It just seems reasonable to me. What the hell do I know? Go to autosafety.org, click on donate. We're done. Are we done? All right.
Sure.
Thanks, everybody.
Wait,
what?
There is an extensive body of literature about how engineers should sample and test devices, and what the risks are, what the probability of failure is. There's a lot that's known about this. So these quality defects that we're talking about, like the fuel injectors failing and the Mercedes van connectors not being adequate, this is just all evidence of terrible engineering controls on their development process. So it's not inevitable. It's a choice made by the manufacturers to not do their job properly. So just leave it there. But thank you for that digression.
If you'd like to hire Fred Perkins to come to your factory, he will roll up a newspaper and swat these engineers on the nose and say, no, bad engineer, test these things better. It's for a nominal fee. I get 10%. And with that, we'll be back next week. Bye.
Very good. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
For more information, visit www.autosafety.org.